What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Van Chats. I'm sitting here with Simon Jones. This is take 2. Yesterday we had some Wi-Fi issues, but today we should be pretty mint because Simon is sitting in Girona, Spain. And if you guys know anything about Girona, Spain, half the guys that I've interviewed that have been over there, their Wi-Fi has been complete shit. But Simon has found some good Wi-Fi. So how you doing, man? How's it going?
Good, man. I'm at my teammate Joe Laverick's house, who he's actually subletting from Ryan Mullen.
Oh, sweet.
So I'm sitting in their apartment at the desk right now, just stealing some Wi-Fi. So
Man, this is crazy. So yesterday we interviewed you in the apartment that was James Piccoli. So we've done an interview out of that apartment. We've also done an interview out of this apartment. We did it with
really,
Hayden McCormick. I'm pretty sure.
okay,
Hayden
yeah,
McCormick
yeah.
was living there, and so he did. We did a podcast out of there, but yeah, that's cool, man. But anyways, let's dive into some of this coronavirus stuff and just kind of get to know you, get to know the background. I know you. We used to be teammates. You went the long trajectory of Europe, and I stayed in Colorado, and you're a lot younger than me too, so it makes a lot more sense. I mean, you're still on a U23. It's technically a U23 team, right? Axeon is.
Yeah. We're all U23s. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you were, it's weird calling you my teammate because I think when you were a teammate of mine, you were like 18. Right?
Yeah. I was 18.
There you go. Straight out of the juniors, 18 years old, and we were racing like American crits and trying to go to pubs and stuff, and we couldn't even bring you in. So, but yeah, man. So let's kind of dive into a little bit of your background. So you rode for Texas Roadhouse, but then you made the move to that Japanese team, which was like, what was it, Interpro Cycling, which is kind of an interesting name.
Yeah, it was a cool team, man. It was a really interesting mix of guys. We actually had one other guy from the Roadhouse team, Evan Klaus, who came.
Yeah.
So both of us went to Interpro the following year, and it was great. The schedule was really incredible. The organization of the team was, minimal for a Conti team, but it was still. I got to do a lot of really awesome races, and it definitely, especially after coming off Roadhouse the year before, and kind of like Roadhouse being like a nice fun year for me to kind of reset and kind of find the love for bike racing again. Going to that team the next year and getting to do the calendar I got to do, as much of it as it was such a big change from Roadhouse, it really was. There were a lot of similarities in the sense that like that wasn't an under 23 team. That was like, one of my best buddies on the team was married with kids, so it was, it's just the same similarity to Texas Roadhouse was there were guys of all kind of ages and different walks of life on the team. And so, and it was cool, to have something like that. And like, you get some guys on the team that are coming down from world tour and it's kind of the end of their career. And then some younger guys who it's kind of the start of their career, like Evan and I. And so it was a really interesting mix, and it was a lot of fun. And as disorganized as it was, it's still, I was just so thankful to be there and to get that opportunity to do that and get to do some of the races that I did do. And it was I think kind of the right formula for me to like really realize that it's what I wanted to be doing. So yeah, it was good, man. That team was a lot of fun, and I still talk to most of the guys from that team. And actually I was coming down. Girona's a small place, everybody's really close together. I was coming down the climb that's really close to where I am here in town. And I was dropping down and I saw one of my teammates who's actually a Spanish guy today from that team 2 years ago. And we didn't have more of an interaction than just like screaming hello at each other, but I saw him, so really, it's really funny.
I mean, you're like in the like cycling mecca, like it's kind of funny living out here in Colorado because you kind of like never have an idea of who you'll run into, like you run into Chloe every once in a while, Chloe Diger, you run into the Alex Howes or whoever. But when you're in Girona, man, like you pretty much can run into anyone out there, especially on the World Tour.
It's crazy, man. You like today, just to name, like I saw Lawson Craddock, Alex Howes, 2 guys from Mitchelton, 2 guys on Alpecin, and I saw David, my old teammate, and probably like 4 or 5 other people. And I did 2-hour ride. So
Yeah. Well,
it wasn't. Yeah,
There you go.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and then kind of, because that was like 2019 when you rode for Interpro, and then you made the move to Hincapie, which, I mean, for us Americans, we all know Hincapie very well. I mean, I guess even the Europeans know the Hincapie squad pretty well. Unfortunately, having to slightly fold. They didn't fold, right? Like there's like still like either a junior program. There's something that they're still trying to do to kind of keep it alive. It was just the top end stuff that had to go.
Yeah, there's the junior team is still around, which is really great. And they're actually at a team camp right now together with the junior team that I rode for, Hot Tubes. They're at a team camp in Georgia together. So those 2 junior teams. So they continued on. But that Rusty Miller, the guy who runs the junior program, has separated from Hincapie a little bit, but I think they're still doing clothing and bikes through that through the Hincapie Pro Team kind of hand-me-downs this year. So it's great to see that continue going. But yeah, it was sad, man. And like I got to know Craven. My dad has been involved with Hincapie for a long time. And I'd known Craven like my whole life. And so I got to really get to know him kind of over the course of last winter. And it's tough, man. It's like his baby, It's like 12
Well,
years
it's
running.
awesome because like the only bit of Craven I've seen Craven in passing, and I think we might have like social media cross paths a few times, but I've I've gotten to know Craven as the guy who wore the Wheaties kit in the time trial, and that's the only part of Craven I know, which is pretty badass because like that's kind of like it's weird because I'd love to meet the guy, I'd love to chat with the guy, but I feel like it would just ruin the nostalgia idea I have of the guy because like the only photo I've ever seen of the guy is just like as a pro cyclist. It was like him getting ready for a time trial like in the 90s wearing a Wheaties kit, and I was like, that's badass.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, so now you've signed to Axeon.
I have.
How did that come about? Like that team was almost about to fold, like which is shocking because like not only are you guys like one of the best teams, U23 teams, but probably one of the better teams in America. And so yeah, like how did that come about? Like where did you and Axel start to pick up? Yeah, what's the deal on that?
Yeah, so essentially when it was really late when we found out that Hincapie was going to be going away. And it was stressful. It was like November. So it's like well past usually when you'd be kind of negotiating contracts and that type of thing. And I've always been really transparent about the whole thing with my dad. My dad has been a longtime sponsor of like a ton of different teams. And so there was essentially Billy Jones.
Yeah.
So my dad had been involved with Hincapie for years, well before I was on the team, or even when I was on the junior team. And so it was great. I got the chance to do that with them. And I think, it wasn't just, it's never just the idea of like, I bring my dad with me when I go to a team, but it's like, it's nice to have that and to have it as a guarantee for me. And I've always been able to, it's not just me that ever goes to a team. It's usually like me and 4 other guys that my dad is kind of watching out for when that happens. And so with Axeon, things happened in November.
That kind of happened with Evan.
Right?
No, like that's like exactly. Kind of the whole story. Like you guys came as like almost like a package. But it was a cool package.
And so I think that besides the idea of protecting my place in the sport, I think having my dad be able to provide the opportunity through money with for everyone else on every team, and Axeon I think was in a tough spot. But yeah, so it everything happened with Hincapie, and it wasn't the result of anything besides I think the Hincapie's struggling with their business, or I don't know what exactly happened, but It just, money wasn't coming together.
Yeah.
And Craven kind of couldn't make it work. And so my dad was still wanting to get involved with the team. I'm still extremely motivated. And I think I had another guy, young guy on the team with me who was really wanting to show himself. His name's Sam Janish. And so we kind of came as a package deal together through Action, the same way it had been with Evan and I in the past. And so it was a weird kind of negotiation, man. And I've never like tried to hide the whole thing. It is what it is for me, and I'm gonna take the opportunity if I'm given it always. And I think that me coming like that, I think people that I get on teams with appreciate me as a teammate and appreciate me as a bike racer as well. And there was a little bit of controversy with the whole thing when it happened because some people have issues with it. But so I got in touch with Axel in November through a really good friend of mine, Sean Quinn, who's pretty much been living in Boulder for the last few years. He was in college there for a while. And so, talks started going, and slowly started to come together towards the end of November. And it was, kind of surreal, man. Like I don't know. I was on Hot Tubes as a junior. I was on, it was great to be on Interpro. I got to do a lot of really cool races. I got to race with Marcel Kittel, and it's like dream fulfilling stuff for me,
well, it's kind of this kind of all sounds like the ODA argument. Like, you've listened to the podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so did you hear the ODA podcast that I did? If not, it's not.
No, I don't think I did.
So that one is like, the whole argument was like a pay to play situation. Like they didn't agree with the fact of pay to play, but like, even in your situation, you're not the first rider to ever do this. And it's not like you are, it's not like you're a Cat 4 or a Jerry with your head, helmet on backwards, that doesn't know what they're doing, but has a $15,000 bike. Like, you've raced your bike, you've won races. And you've kind of earned a bit of a chance or a spot. And like, I think Jim Miller was even putting this forward as like, hey, look, like, you have, I'm not going to name names, but you have your top 3 kids, right? Your upper echelon of kids. And I don't want to name names, but you guys can literally think and go, oh, I know who you're talking about. And then you have this fluff, is what I like to call it. And let's say it's a 15-man roster. So now you have 12 kids. You literally could line them all up, and they all have like pluses and minuses, right? And so, but at the end of the day, if you take 1 versus 2, you literally could go, 2 has brown hair, I'll take 2. That's like how similar they are as riders. And so it kind of, I think the ODA is like a good option in the sense of, well, you have nowhere else to go. Maybe you don't have the financial backing like you have, or sponsors like you have. You apply for the ODA, you apply for scholarship funding, and you apply for the funding, and you just see what happens. Because like, even me as an athlete, like, dude, I don't hide it. Mike Levine is a huge supporter of what I've done, and has supported me since I was a Cat 4, and there's been teams, not going to mention names, who have asked me to bring Mike on as a sponsor and pretty much fold the money that I make, or fold the support that I make, into the team as a whole. And like, obviously there's not enough to actually make that happen, but it's a thing, it's like, it's a thing. And so I'm not saying to these, to athletes, to just like kind of go out and find somebody to fund your career, but like, there's somebody out there that wishes they did what you did and want to be a part of what you're doing. And so if you can bring value to said sponsor and bring them and make them a part, like, I think it's awesome. I mean, the downside for you is like, what's the difference of your dad versus Mike Levine? The only difference is Mike Levine's not my dad.
No, yeah.
I mean? And I think that's the thing, right?
So yeah, and there was there was an article written when this whole thing happened with Action that was like, it was kind of like a gossip piece. And like, I'll be honest with you, it hurt my feelings. Like I'm just trying to do what I love, and I work really hard, and it's not like I'm just like on this team because of my situation. It's I've been committed to this sport for 12 years now, and my dad isn't just starting to do this now, like helping out teams. He's been doing this for years. He was a part of Kenda 5 Hour Energy, and that was when I was 9. Like there's no, and it's unfortunate. And I think the worst part about the whole thing was not how it reflected on me, but how it reflected on my dad, because he was more upset than I was. He's like, oh, everyone just now thinks that I'm getting involved because of you, and they don't understand that I love cycling, and I'm in this because I want to provide opportunity to as many kids your age as I can, because I wish I would have had.
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you on that front. Like that guy I don't know. I haven't seen him race in a couple of years due to like the lockdown and everything else. The dude can still race his fucking bike, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the dude can still ride. So
yeah,
if you don't know Billy Jones, the guy can ride a bike. Yeah, he supports cycling teams, and yeah, he's got the money to help you out. But the dude, he has a passion of some sort, because if you can ride a bike like that, like, I mean, he was riding, some of the teams that he sponsors off his wheel, and so like I think we're in this culture now, right? Like we're in this like, and we're two white guys talking about this, right? And so like the downside to this is one thing we'll never understand, and even for you, right? Like one thing you may not ever understand is what it's like for the other rider who had to work to get to Action and meet Axel or whatever else in a different way. I'm not saying that you didn't have to work, like it's just a different way. And it's the same for me, because I used to be the same. I used to be the guy who would bash you for your situation, right?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, man, when I was your age and I'd show up to track nationals and my bike's falling apart and my parents didn't want anything to do with it and couldn't support me even if they wanted to, but they didn't want anything to do with it. And I just blamed everybody else around me for my situation. When in reality, you just got to make the most of your situation and try to expand it.
No, man. And I've always been like outright so thankful with my dad and that whole thing. And which
is probably why you don't hide it, right?
No, man.
It's like a sponsor.
No, exactly. And you know what? But the thing about my dad is it's not just me. It's like this Sam Janish kid who also, when all the heat came out after this whole thing happened, like he was getting just as hard of a time as I was. And he's has no relation to me besides the fact that my dad believes in him and thinks he has and it's his family isn't like mine. And so, my dad's not in a place to help out every person under the sun, but if he sees somebody that he really believes in, and that's the great part about it, is like this sport is like, I think the thing that's so underestimated is if you put out good energy and like all that stuff, and you want to like meet good people, you can make opportunities for yourself by doing that. Exactly. Because it's a small sport, man. And I think the coolest part and kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about is this whole situation now on our team with Theo Guggenhardt, who's going to be sponsoring a spot for a minority rider in the second half of the season as a stagiaire for our team, is super cool. Like I love that, man. So for those of you guys who haven't heard, Theo Guggenhardt, who won the Giro d'Italia last year, he's actually paying in full for a spot on our team for an under 23 rider who's a minority, who's from England, to come onto the team. And so what's going to end up happening?
Teo's like my age, I think. I think he's 26, 27, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so he's an alumni of our team. So he's going to be funding a spot for a guy. And man, I love that.
Yeah,
And I think that's what this sport needs. And cycling isn't the people that get involved in this sport from a monetary standpoint. There's not that much money to be made in it, man. You gotta the people who are involved in this sport who are funding it are in it because they love it.
for sure.
Um,
There's no
and I,
ROI, which is kind of funny. Like there's ROI on in some regard, but like with your dad, for example, like probably nobody's ever heard of your dad, and that's probably a good thing because he'd probably get an insane amount of emails, which hopefully not enough people listen to this podcast where they're going to be begging old Mr. Jones, but yeah, like you like what people don't understand is that like when people front this money, like I actually like Mike is a great example. I'll just go back to him from my experience. He literally looked at me and he goes, "Dude, I know I'm not going to make anything off this. Like, I need you to know that, and I need like we agree on that, right? Like, I know I'm not going to make anything, but if you come by a case or if like family friend whatever, like throw them my way, like give me a shout out, like show some love, like help me with my training from time to time, like if I ask, like little things like that is is massive. And so like to hear people be like, oh, he just funded a spot for his kid. Well, it's like, well, before his kid was even really kicking the pedals in the pro peloton, he was funding. I mean, Kenda
yeah,
5 hour, if like you were 18 on Texas Roadhouse, I was like 15, 17 with Kenda. So like that's a big gap, bro. Like I mean, you probably don't even know if you like riding bikes yet. And so, yeah, I'm kind of indifferent with it all. Like it's everybody has different situations. Everybody has tough
yeah,
situations. Everybody, and that's the thing. Like the best thing is like just because you have money doesn't make it easier. Like you stress now because now your stress is like I have to prove that like I deserve to be on this team just as much as the other guy deserves to be on this team. Um, I my dad, I can't let my dad down. Like my dad, like and I'm assuming that your dad's a good dude and like he's not like, oh man, I paid for your spot or whatever, da, 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 da. Like like he's not going to be a jerk about it. Like he trusts in you. He knows that you love it,
yeah.
and at the end of the day, he wants you to be happy. And so like I can only imagine that stress. You know what I mean? Like while it seems easy on the outside, it's really hard on the inside. And so hopefully people get that from this podcast. And I'm
No,
and,
man,
and, and
and
I'm super thankful that you were willing to chat about that. That's cool.
no, man, and just I think the thing for me is I had a talk with my dad because this is not something where it's just like my dad and I don't talk about it. It's not like
Yeah.
he just does it and then
Yeah.
it's like we had a big talk. He's like, well, how do you feel about it? And I was like, well, I think that like the idea that I want to be involved in cycling for the rest of my life and I want to be able to provide people at some point with the opportunity I've been given, whether that's as a team director or as a logistics manager for a team. And my dream is to be involved with an under 23 team or a junior team at some point. I think that
Yeah.
for me is like, I think that without cycling and without like the experience I've had so far, um, I think that I would have been I think that my life would be completely different. I don't think that I'd be the person I am today. And I'm stoked with who I am. And I think my dad and I talked about that. And I was like, well, to be on this team is something really special. This team is like,
Yeah.
it's whether you're going to be a manager or a rider or whatever it is, to be on this team is something really special. And, to get to what we were talking about with ROI for my dad and for me, it's like, okay, yeah, for me, it makes sense. But also, my dad would have given the money somewhere to someone this year, no matter
Yeah.
what. And it's not like he's given an amount of money that just funds one spot. It's an amount of money that provides opportunity to make this team stay alive or to
That's
go
the
away.
big thing, man. That's the big thing I want people to grasp. I don't know if you guys were on Twitter, but Action was folding. The team
Yeah.
was going away. And so like I I can't stress that enough. And it's not I don't know the Hincapie situation, but I'm assuming I'm like I said, I know your dad in passing, but I don't see him as the guy going, oh, here's this opportunity. Let me take all this cash away and throw it this way.
No, no.
I don't see
Yeah.
that as a thing. Okay.
No,
And
yeah.
and so
I
I think that's something that I can't stress enough. It's like not knowing the whole story and not knowing, like, dude, you saved, like, that saves spots for 20 people, or whatever,
no,
however
yeah.
many kids. There's a lot of kids on that team.
Yeah, there's 13 this year, and the deal is for more than 1 year. So it's opportunity for, and I think especially right now when cycling is the sport side of it is having such a difficult time. I think especially for this team, which I'm wearing a sweatshirt right now that says we've had 39 World Tour riders go from this team into the World Tour. Like it's incredible. So it's
Yeah.
like, and I feel really fortunate to be a part of that. And I had to talk with my dad, and he's like, look, man, he's like, you could break your femur and stop racing tomorrow, and it's not like I'm gonna pull the money away. It's like I'm doing this. You're a bonus for me, and as much as I'm like, look, I can't stress enough how thankful to my dad I am for that. But cycling is a sport where if there's not people like my dad, I think that it's just the sport wouldn't exist. And so
100%.
I'm lucky to have that. And I think that it's a special situation, man. And I'm happy to be here. And I haven't raced my bike since August of 2019.
Yeah.
And I am so excited to get back racing. And I'll tell you, the aura in this team and getting to meet Axel and all the staff on this team, it's special, man. Like
that's
stoked.
gotta be super cool. So, like, I mean, let's talking about racing. Like, what's your goals? Like, when I knew you, like, you were an all-arounder, man. You could sprint, you could kind of do it all. Like, we got pushed out of Joe Martin together, so we got to hang out and chat a little longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, what's your goals, like, with Action? Like, are you gonna be a team guy? You got ambitions of a stage one day? What's up?
Well, it's crazy. So, the schedule, we got over here as a team. We had our team camp last week, which was, awesome just to get everybody together for the first time and get out and do some riding. But yeah, so races are still getting canceled. It seems like, if you're watching from, if you're watching from the US, it seems like, oh, everything's cycling utopia in Europe and it's all going well. But that's for the World Tour guys. That's not for everybody. And the worst part is this, kind of the second tier races that we would usually be doing. Our invites to those races are getting pulled out because the World Tour teams don't have as many races. And so they're actually taking spots away from our team, which happened at a couple of races. And then France is going back down into lockdown. So U23 Roubaix and U23 Liège, which are some of the premier development races that our team usually puts a big emphasis on, those races are now gone. But our team's working super hard to get race days for us. So they found some what are called UN23 races that are in Italy.
Yeah.
So in 2.5 weeks, we're supposed to be going out to those, which is it's actually 7 race days in 10 days.
Is it a stage race or is it just 7 days of racing?
It's a 4-day stage race and 3 1-days. So it's a flat sprint, usually a race that ends in a sprint, a more climby race, 1 day off, baby Strada Bianca, which is, it's not in the same area, not near Siena, but it's actually in Romagna, but the race is similar, but more punchy climbing. That one's 150K.
Oh, they cut it in half for you babies.
Yeah, little boys got to get the little race, man. And then a day off and then a 4-day stage race. So that's what's coming up. And then the other half of the team, a couple of days later, goes to do Volta Algarve, which is a big one. So I'm not on the roster for that, but the other half of the team is getting to go do Classica Arbida and that race. and then we have a couple of weeks, and then Ronde van Limburg and Circuit Wallonie, which are 2 1.1s in Belgium at the end of May, and then I'll be coming back and maybe doing Kanza, maybe not. So we'll see about that.
It's called Unbound, man. You gotta make sure.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
my
just
bad.
kidding, dude. I find myself talking to sponsors all the time and being like, yeah, I'm going to Unbound, and they're like, wait, what? And I'm like, Kanza, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah. We're back.
I'm pretty sure I just figured out that the name changed like when we were at team camp, because they were like Unbound at my rider. I was like, what? And they were like Kanza, and I was like, okay, yes.
Yeah,
it's still taking me. I'm adapting still to the new.
Yeah, right
the
now,
new name.
I luckily I'll be out there probably doing a podcast. You should stop by the booth. I don't know. I gotta fully chat it out, but I'll go ahead and drop it. A brand. The reason why I'm not mentioning the brand is because we haven't fully worked it out, but I'll let you guys know. But a brand is helping me get out there to do a live podcast at Unbound, which is gonna be sick because we're gonna interview some of their riders, interview some people, just have people drop in, drink some coffee. I'll be vaccinated by then, so it'll all be like under COVID protocol. It'd be sick. So hopefully we can make that happen. And yeah, you can swing by. But yeah, man. So like, because I don't want to keep you all morning. You've listened to the podcast. You've heard that we ask everybody that comes on the podcast one question. This is the only question that's planned, and that's if you could have coffee with one person, dead or alive, who would that be? Why? And how would you take your coffee? Or you could do it. Who would that be? How would you take your coffee and why? It's however you feel. Let it
go. I think I would have. It's tough for me because I'm torn between wanting to have coffee with someone in the cycling world and someone outside of the cycling world.
Let's hear it both.
Okay.
Like we have Johnny Wales, an infamous guest. I like to say infamous, but when I ask that question, it's like 7 people, and it's usually the entire United States Postal Service team in some regard, usually back from that era. But yeah, like that's who he wants to sit down and chat with.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll start with outside of cycling. Outside of cycling, I would love to have a coffee with Jimi Hendrix.
Oh, okay.
And I think that I have an appreciation for him and his music, and I think that his character is something that I think that people are portrayed really differently, and I think their music portrays them a certain way. And that's my go-to long bike ride music. Him and the Clash. So I think that getting the chance to sit down and maybe he wouldn't be drinking coffee, but I'd be drinking a coffee.
What kind of coffee would you have?
I'm a cappuccino man. But it does depend on the time of day. So it's crazy here, man, because it's so easy. There's so many good coffee shops. You could just go out and grab I usually get a cappuccino. If I'm making a coffee, I'm an Americano. So if I'm having coffee out with him, I'd have a cappuccino. If I'm having coffee here at home, I'll probably have an Americano. I haven't mastered the cappuccino yet. So, and then secondly, I think that if I could have coffee with someone inside of the cycling world, it would be Eddie Merckx, which is weird because I got to ride with his son at team camp, who runs our team, which is it's kind of starstruck. I don't know. It's weird to have him as your director, man. It's and I've met George Hincapie when I was on the junior team and stuff, but Axel's really interesting because he's similar to me in a lot of weird ways with our dad's kind of, obviously it's different. His dad was maybe the greatest cyclist ever alive. But to have the reputation with your dad and have that be something that's you're involved with, to get to have conversations with Axel at camp was really cool. And so I think to follow that up and get to have coffee with Eddie Merckx and just kind of see what his aura is and what he's like, because it's funny, man. Axel said to me at camp, he was like, yeah, when I first started my career, it was funny. I would go to races and people would be like, hey man, your dad won this race. And he'd be like, yeah, that pretty much happens at every race I go to.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
I
was like,
wonder. I wonder if Vanderpool gets stressed
yeah,
about that stuff, you know. But like,
yeah,
then again, he just goes out and wins his own bike races, and so it might be
yeah,
Vanderpool's son or next. Yeah, you see what I'm saying down the line.
yeah. I mean, it's crazy, man. It's like, yeah. So I think getting to have coffee with Eddie Merckx would be pretty cool. Maybe at some point I will get to have coffee with Eddie Merckx. I'm in the circle now, which is kind of crazy. So
That's insane, man. Yeah, no, and like I said, man, like I really appreciate you coming on and just being honest, being open, and kind of putting your truth out there. Like it's one of those things. It's very easy to depict a situation off of off social media, like just make up your own idea or hearing it through the grapevine and hearing it from one rider to another. And so it's super cool that you were able to kind of come on and just be like, hey, straightforward, and kind of give your dad some love, which is sick.
yeah,
You know, like
no,
I
he
said,
deserves
man,
it, man.
yeah,
He
no,
deserves it.
yeah. I mean, like, hey, I think it helped me get through Roadhouse, and like I said, I've never even really met the guy, and
Yeah,
so like I know that there was an opportunity with Roadhouse where, you know, money's tight on every team, man, and especially like for a guy like me personally, I know that's the only thing I can do is put myself out there. Like Roadhouse took a risk with me when they brought me on in the first place. Like, I mean, I had no results. I think I was a new Cat 1. I'd never really raced any crits. Definitely never raced a stage race. Yeah, I was just a track guy. And so they helped me out a lot. And it's kind of cool to get that opportunity, and you kind of can't just pass it up. And so, but anyways, guys, thanks so much for listening. You can check out Simon Jones's social media down in the link below, as well as you can check out the Action Hagens Berman team down below as well. Is it still Hagens Berman? It's still Hagens
yeah.
Berman, right?
It's Hagens Berman Action is the name of the
Hagens
team.
Berman Action. So that it changes for me every year, and so like I'm just trying to make sure that I get it right. But anyways, yeah, guys, thanks so much for listening, and yeah, we'll see you next time. Cheers.